So, I know I've been putting this off for a little while, and I figured that I actually want to say a few things about it. And the topic that I'm going to be talking about is the exploration of Elite Dangerous. Now, as I'm making this voice recording, it's been quite a few weeks since I've made the video in question that you're seeing here, and that was my first big expedition out of charted space to Betelgeuse, one of the biggest stars that's close by. It's a supergiant that's fairly old, and according to scientists, capable of going supernova within the next million years, which is nothing compared to the lives of human beings, but on a cosmic scale, it's fairly soon. And it was the first big trip that I really made outside of our area of space, so it was something of a real big adventure for me. Now, at the time when I did this, it was in a Cobra Mark III, which is a mid-range sort of quasi-jack-of-all-trades ship that's useful for combat, a little bit useful for trading if you want to do some low-level commodity stuff, and it's also fairly useful for exploration if you're tight on cash. When I picked up the Cobra, it was about 345,000 credits, so it didn't really break my bank personally, but it was not the easiest to trick out so that I could eke out as much jump distance as I could. That was before I managed to purchase my ASP, which was whopping 6 million credits, plus the multiple millions of credits that I needed to get a fairly decent jump drive. The one I've got right now, I've got a jump distance of around 26.55 light years, including all the stuff with it. I have to run without a shield, though, because it's a bit of a sacrifice I have to make, which means if I drop out of hyperspace, if I'm going too close to a star or whatnot, I could get hull damage, and they could potentially damage my canopy. If my canopy goes, I only have about maybe 5 minutes of emergency oxygen left, which is not very good considering how far away I get. Betelgeuse itself is only about 500 light years away or so from Earth about. I think I jumped out of Epsilon Eridani, or my guess, anyway. So it was still underneath 1,000 light years. And what you're going to see now is basically every single jump it took for me to get back, including any interesting ones. Obviously, this is compressed real time. It took me about 4 hours, almost 5, I believe, non-stop to go from Betelgeuse back to Epsilon Eridani. Yeah, I could have gone back to a border system, but it wouldn't have been as interesting. And I did this all in one sitting, by the way. Nearly 5 hours of taking the quickest jump routes I knew of. And I made some fairly decent discoveries on this as well. So if any time you see some sort of break from the constant stream of stars and brown dwarfs and whatnot, because I found a rather interesting system. And there were quite a few out here. I mean, some of them were discovered, of course, but others were not. So it gave me a little bit of a sizable payout. I think I got a couple million credits from this. So what I have to say I really like about the exploration aspect, now that I'm finished 2 deep space expeditions, is I love the scale of this game. The scale is positively one of the things that drew me into this. One of the reasons I bought the game is that you have an entire galaxy to work around in. And that included different types of stars. I mean, well, the world we live in, of course, we have a star that's a G-class star. I've seen relatively few G-class stars in my travels around here, so it's not the most common stellar type out there. More likely than not, you're going to run across red dwarfs, M-class stars. Sometimes you'll run across K-class stars, which are orange stars, but not very often will you actually see G-class stars, so stars that are like our sun, and specifically a G2V class star. So it's awfully particular, but oftentimes you'll find interesting systems like these. Look at this, a close orbiting binary system like that, where the stars are maybe at most about maybe 10 or so light seconds away from each other. That's my personal guess, of course. And I have to watch it while I was going into cinematic view here because I didn't want to get pulled out. Like a funny story, when I was going back from one of my other expeditions, when I was getting back into known space, I accidentally jumped into a white dwarf system, and white dwarfs are of course very dense cores of stars. I didn't know it. I thought it looked like a white star, so Immediately after jumping out, I accelerated, and because I was so close, I was almost immediately pulled out of frame shift, and it was a little bit scary because I didn't know what was going on. The photo opportunities for everything out here is absolutely mind-blowing. Especially when you're so far away, you start to see planets that nobody has really seen before. I was lucky enough to find some of these things. I didn't get lucky here. The guy scanned the star, but he was more interested in this right here, a terrestrial ammonia world. So I was able to scan this, and ammonia planets are actually fairly rare. I was able to find 2 on my second expedition, and none of them really looked as cool as they do here. I'll probably no, I don't really know how to insert photos into this new thing yet. I still got to get used to it. But the scales involved are so massive on a stellar level. You're just jumping and jumping and jumping. Some people told me that this is like a space trucker. That's what one of my friends told me. He says, Chris, when you play this game, you just got to play like a space trucker. And you know what? If trading is like space trucking, this is like going on the space interstate. It is long unless you have the money invested into very, very good jump drives. If you don't, you're going to be going for quite a while, and you're going to be looking at the same thing over and over again. Basically, my entire routine when it comes out here is immediately exiting frame shift, and that's doing a quick scan of the star to check to see if there's any interesting planets. Otherwise, I just fuel scoop and I go on my merry way. See, we're only about 6 minutes in this, and I've already lost track of how many stars we've seen. I think that I think I had to go through 60 systems at least. I think so. I mean, don't quote me on that. It's been a little while, and whoa, blew right past that. It had to be something interesting because I decided to cut the video here. I actually forget what I found. I mean, I've been putting this off for a little while because I guess could it be out of laziness or something like that. I've actually I haven't been playing a lot of Elite lately, and that's not because it's not fun. I love Elite. I really do. That's why I bought the game in the first place, and I'm still looking forward to it. It's actually because, a little unrelated here, I've actually purchased an original Xbox from one of my used Game Stars, and I decided to build up a small collection. Well, small right now. It's only about maybe 30 or 40 games right now. Rare and ubiquitous, good and bad, online and in person. And I'll have to make a video eventually of all the stuff that I've got. And I may or may not upload a video before this that shows footage from it. Oh, this is a water world. So even if you don't find terrestrial planets or find Earth-likes, which is still 1 in a million, I've been to about maybe 500 systems or so, and I haven't found one yet, you may run across water planets. And water planets are really cool because, well, it gives you the semblance of an Earth-like. Even if you don't find one, you could find a rocky planet that is a candidate for terraformation. And if you find one that's a candidate for terraformation, the value of the planet skyrockets up to a huge amount compared to what you found it for. And it's very cool if you find water worlds in the system like this, which means that if you do choose to start up a colony, you could have a source for your water. Or you could just crash comets into it or something like that. But fact of the matter is, your colonists wouldn't run out of anything to drink anytime soon if one of these things is in system. Which sort of makes me wonder if when they do expansions for this game, where they will allow parts of space to become terraformed as time goes on. Like, naturally, human space is going to expand far over time, and they'll be moving into brand new star systems. And maybe what the game can do is those that have been flagged for terraformation could eventually become terraformed. Now, I don't know in the fluff of the game if that's going to take some time or if it's going to be instantaneous. I'm not too sure what the plan is for that. But I hope that there is some future plan for that, because it's really going to help immersion and make players feel like they've actually contributed to the functionality of the game by terraforming all these planets. And I think this was the binary system I was at before. No, I guess it wasn't. There's a really cool clip somewhere in here where I was coasting between 2 close orbiting binary stars. Ooh, white stars. Or is it a blue-white star? I don't remember exactly. But the fact of the matter is, you don't commonly see stars like these around here. So they tend to be very interesting systems. And what I've also noticed is stars like those also tend to be binary systems at the very least, or they have smaller stars. And especially the hip stars. What a lot of people don't know about the hip stars is that they tend to be a very, very big star and a very, very small star. I've seen ones where they're orbited by neutron stars. Oh, it's a quaternary system. And for some reason, they decided to scan the planet and not the star itself, so whatever, I'll just take whatever I can find. Sometimes I think people realize that they can probably make a bit more money scanning the planets, especially if a planet has rings. If a planet has rings, it increases the value of it because it counts as a pristine resource, which is very, very useful. And oftentimes, sometimes in binary systems where the twin of the star is going to be far, far away, will sometimes have very, very important planets there as well. And you have to make the decision, do you want to travel 340 light seconds all the way there? I remember what I did. I made a quick detour to Bellatrix here. And Bellatrix, of course, being a named star, will probably have someone that has gone out there. Usually it's one of the more common stars. If you can, if the star close by has some form of name that isn't a number catalog, more likely than not, someone's going to make it there before me. Because like I did for Betelgeuse, someone was there. But when I go to Bellatrix, which oddly enough doesn't have any planets around it, was also the case. But you know what? It's a giant star like that, so it's going to have some value to it. So even if someone has discovered it, go anyway, because then you can say that you've been there, and then you can say that you earned a little bit of money from it. But if you're the first person to reach it, good for you, good for you. And what I've also noticed is that people tend to gravitate either towards the Coalsack Nebula or the Barnard Loop. The Barnard Loop is pretty far away, and it's probably, trying to think, galactic compass rose here. I think that galactic north, I'm not too sure if it's north from our position, like if it's going across, or if it crosses through, going up and through the galactic core. But that's why I'm trying to give you a little bit of a direction. But they're two of the most easily noticeable giant nebulas close by. The Coalsack Nebula, which a lot of deep space explorers think of as the lighthouse when they're coming back to civilized space, and the Barnard Loop, which is so damn far away and doesn't seem to be getting closer, especially in the Cobra Mark III, where I was only able to go maybe 15 or so light years at the most. But now that I got my ASP, now I can do some decent exploration where I can get out there. I can get a little bit farther, because you're only limited by how much fuel you can carry, because your fuel tanks actually don't have mass. Your fuel tanks are empty. They're less than a ton, so I guess the game doesn't even recognize it. The fuel, however, does have mass, and the fuel itself will actually limit your jump distance, just simply by the virtue that it has weight. So, technically speaking, the less fuel that you have, the farther that you're going to jump, because it's just less total mass that your ship is lugging around. Not that I'm saying that it's a smart idea to not fuel your ship. I mean, look at how much fuel I've got right now. It's usually my strategy for doing all this is, if I'm out there and I drop below half a fuel tank, I start to get a little bit nervous, because it's usually around this time that I will pretty much panic. But it looks like I actually made it all the way back to Epsilon Eridani. I guess it just took a little while. I mean, geez. But it goes to show you that depending on how close you are, you're willing to forego a couple of jumps. I don't remember how much fuel my fuel scoop could carry on my Cobra Mark III, but on my ASP, I can collect up to 150 units of fuel per second, which is pretty useful, because even for big tanks, I think I'm rolling with only a 32-ton tank right now, or that carries 32 tons of fuel, and I can carry, I can scoop up 150 units. Means that I can usually fill my tank in about a minute or so, and that's of course if I have good stars nearby. And when you jump at around 17 light years per jump at the very least, that fuel can be steadily decreased, and well, you tend to deal with it eventually. On the return trips, I found that I'm glad I'm playing in solo play when it comes like this, because if you're playing an open player, not on a private server, you might get a little bit nervous the closer you get to home. And the reason for that is you're afraid that you're going to get capped. It's the same sort of thing. If you feel that you're carrying a huge amount of something that's worth something, like resources for instance, someone gets a lucky interdiction on you and you can't get away, you could potentially get destroyed, and millions of credits worth of exploration data could just be lost in the void, just fluttering away in the solar wind. And yeah, it just makes me glad that I'm basically playing here safe and all. You could call me a little bit of a coward for doing that, but I'm more than willing to just have like a solo exploration of the game. I mean, of course, I will go into open play if I want to, for sure. But if I'm doing deep space exploration, I'm more than likely going to keep to myself, that sort of thing. Gamescom isn't too far away now when I record this, probably only a few days at the most. And makes you feel that there's going to be a big announcement there. It's probably not going to be as big as I think it is, but it's definitely going to change the game a little bit. It could be the CQC update, or more than likely, something to do with planetary exploration. They could maybe give us a video of walking around a space station or something like that. So as we're wrapping up, I want to talk about things I wasn't too much a fan of. It's the planetary models are kind of limited. And I understand this is space, and of course there's only so many elements, so you can't see everything that there is going to be, but there's usually the only difference between a planet is usually if it's an ice planet, a brown ice planet, or like a white ice planet, or a slightly bluish ice planet. And if it's a terrestrial planet, it's only maybe about brown or something else. Oh, I stopped here because I wasn't sure why I couldn't connect to request docking, and it turns out I turned off my sensors to give myself a lower heat output so I could stay around the star a little bit longer. It took me a little while to figure it out. I'm wondering, why can't I request docking? Aren't I like, isn't this Federation space? Aren't I allied here? So, not enough planetary variation, and I feel that the stars don't really fully represent stars as they are. There's no sunspots. There's no majorly detailed solar occurrences or solar prominences and all that. I would really love to see solar flares that go on if you happen to find a star that's in the process of flaring, where there's like excessive activity, or your system could warn you if there's excessive solar activity, so it's not safe to fuel a star, even if fuel at a star, even if it's scoopable. And yeah, that would just help with the immersion a whole lot. I mean, it's not a bad thing at all. I mean, we're still in progress. There's still plenty of work that needs to be done. I just want to see a couple things that make the universe seem a bit more alive, because every star model seems to be rather static in the grand scheme of things. And also, I would like gas giants to maybe have some more moons, because logically speaking, a gas giant would attract a lot more moons because of its gravitational forces. Again, that's not a bad thing. And it's just something I would personally like to see, something that Frontier doesn't need to do. And I'm still waiting for the planetary landings. That's one of the things I hope that they announce at Gamescom, or at least hint at the very least. Because much like No Man's Sky, I feel that Frontier has a pretty good opportunity to make one of the most in-depth space games ever. This is a simulation. I found neutron stars. I found a Herbig star. I don't know what that is, but apparently they're kind of rare. And they spin a whole lot. And black holes orbiting black holes. And I was too scared to get close to them. I was like freaking out. Hopefully you can see that in my next video or something like that. But it just goes to show you that there's great potential here. And I really love exploring the universe, because I want to have like these periods where I'm scared by new developments, or if I'm just impressed or in complete and total awe. And like simply the fact that if you travel without your shield, sure, you can have much better. There's victory right there. And simply the fact that you can be in danger, but you can trade off that danger with excessive functionality. It shows that there's a lot of stuff that they could do here, and shows that there's a lot of successes they could have. Oh, and by the way, I should add that I actually earned about 3 to 4 million credits in this, and it doesn't look it because you sell an entire page, and you could have multiple pages of discoveries. So that's something that I was a little bit disappointed at first because I thought that's all I got, and I figured, really, I spent days out there and that's all I get? But I can add a whole bunch of first discoveries to my to my elite resume, and I was very proud of it, especially on my second expedition where I had quite literally hundreds of first exploration data there. So, and I'm looking done adding more. So I just got to get away from normal space, stop heading towards things that I know people are going to be heading towards, like head up or down, not towards the Coalsack Nebula. And maybe I'll see a whole lot more new discoveries. And it's been about 500 systems, and I haven't seen an Earth-like yet, but that doesn't mean I won't see it soon. So if I can really sum it all up really quickly, I enjoyed it. It's great. It's immersive. It's expressive. It's space, our space. And I'm happy to explore it. I just think that they could use a little bit more tweaking in that regard. Make things artistically more appealing. And you got me forever. You've already got me forever, but you'll get me forever +1. You can do it, Frontier. I believe in you. And I'm ready to explore again. Ready to go on Expedition 3 anytime soon. Thanks for sticking through this. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. And if you got Elite Dangerous, especially on Xbox, I think it's still $35, but get it if you want it. It's a lot of fun. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.